Mr. Mukhtar Babayev, COP president, and Mr. Simon Steele hugging and congratulating each other on the achievement, the biggest achievement of COP29, the establishment of new climate finance goal. That actually faced several challenges. And the primary challenge was disagreement over the amount of the climate finance needed, because estimations today of the climate finance gaps are around 3.1 and 3.5 trillion globally. And of course, this was an issue, but overall, this discussion was taken further, and we signed and launched Baku to Belém roadmap 1.3 trillion that will enable to scale up the agreed financing to developing countries. And we expect this finance to come not only from public sources, but also include MDB finance and private finance, which is actually very important for our activities. Another resolution and another achievement of this COP is the resolution of Article 6. So, of course, Article 6 has seen many changes within this COP, but I will focus on most important, which is Article 6.2. So under Article 6.2, we now have a clear framework that will help us to prevent double counting and streamline the trading between countries, allowing them to directly cooperate between each other on agreed rules on transparency and accountability. On Article 6.4, it was actually the first time since 2013 that we have now a centralized global market for trading emission reductions, allowing not only countries, but also private entities to participate in these trends. And this involves implementation of PACM, or Paris Agreement Crediting Mechanism, which is a UN-supervised system that will help us to connect global markets to ensure credible and environmentally sound emission reductions. While we still expect for the standards and methodologies to be finalized, and also first credit is expected not later than the end of 2025, this resolution is already achieved, already named as a game changer in the global climate cooperation. So another nice photo where we see the heads of the MDBs here, and they're happy because they have pledged 120 billion annually financing by 2030 to help low and middle income countries combat climate change impact. So out of these 120, we will have 42 billion specifically set aside for adaptation efforts that also emphasizes the importance of this topic. MDBs also plan to mobilize additional 65 billion from the private sector using their resources to attract private finance.
Leila, we lost your, yeah, exactly, thank you.
Sorry. Is it better? Yes? Great.
Yes.
So, looking ahead to COP30 in Brazil, we should focus on the main topics that will be in the discussion. So, first of all, of course, we expect new NDCs, which are nationally determined contributions, and also national adaptation plans to be submitted by countries by February 2025. And some of them actually had already done this, which is the UK and Brazil, for instance. So we expect this to be announced also within this year. Another focus area, which was mentioned before, is adaptation. Adaptation is in top agenda now, since we have our global goal on adaptation, and moreover, on COP29, we had a launch of Baku Adaptation Roadmap and Baku High-Level Dialogue on Adaptation that will allow to hold adaptation discussions alongside each further COP session. So each following COP will have a specific adaptation focus and discussions. So more topics are to be discussed, like scaling up finance through putting targets in tripling renewable power capacity, as well as doubling energy efficiency. And all of this will for sure contribute to Baku-Belém roadmap that we launched at COP29. So not only this, but overall expectations for COP30 are pretty high. And to conclude, I would say that here in Baku, in a very short time frame, we tried to come together and to achieve agreement on important pieces of climate finance like NCQGs and Article 6. And understanding that this is only the beginning, I would wish to our COP30 colleagues lots of luck, success, and also enthusiasm that we would like to see in order to all the world to come together again and to push forward even more bold actions and real solutions to combat climate change impacts. So thank you for your attention, and I look forward to any questions that you may have. Thank you. Marcela, over to you.
Thank you so much, Leila. There are some questions in the chat, if you could also have a look there, but we have some opportunities to also answer some of the questions at the end in the open discussion. But for now, thank you so much for this insightful presentation, Leila. Let me please introduce now today's interview, which will be conducted by Liliana Pozo, as I was saying, our FIG Advisory Manager for Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Liliana will be interviewing Ines Rocha, our Regional Director for Europe, to discuss the key achievements in terms of climate finance in the region last year and the expectations for 2025. Liliana, Ines, welcome, and thank you again for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marcela, and thank you, Ines, for participating on this webinar. It's very exciting to have you here. It's actually the first time we have a joint Latin America-Europe webinar for the Green Banking Academy, so it's great that you can participate and representing Europe and what we've done for Europe. So Ines, as Leila was mentioning, in COP in Baku, multilaterals, it's clear that we play a major role in terms of climate finance. From your perspective, what can you tell us about the impact generated in Europe over the past year, so in 2024, related to climate finance? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I hope you can hear me well. Yeah?
Yes, we can.
Perfect.
Fantastic. So I am actually calling from Belgrade, where I was at the launch of an alliance for green financing, so supported by the Austrian government. So, you know, I've actually been interacting with quite a few of our clients in the manufacturing side in terms of how they can green their business. So, you know, the topic of climate and shaping the future in terms of climate finance is very much at the core of all our discussions. And I was delighted also to see that Leila put a picture when I was also at in Baku last year for COP29, because the event put a lot of focus on what can be done for Europe. It is, of course, a global event, but there is a lot of focus in the region, given that it was held in Baku. So just to put a little bit of context of you know, looking at Europe, the current situation and what we have done, and also impact generated over the past years and going a little bit forward. So if we look at fossil fuel dependency, Europe still has quite a long way to go on decarbonization. You look at countries like Poland, they are still very much dependent on coal, for example. And even here in the Western Balkans, we were discussing today, electricity is still very much dependent on fossil fuels. You know, about in some countries, about 2/3, 3/4 are still fossil fuel dependent. The imperative to decarbonize has become even more important, in particular, given the situation of the war and aggression on Ukraine, where Europe as well is trying to shift away from dependency from Russian gas. So, the region's vulnerability to climate change is growing, and we see that also impact on floods and droughts. In fact, here in Serbia, we were discussing impacts of droughts, but also if we look into the, quite recently, a few months ago, floods into Central Europe, and there's an estimated economic damage of about 1.3% per annum, which is quite high. So IFC is working really in Europe to accelerate decarbonization, climate finance. This is at the core and the focus of what we do. We actually managed to achieve a climate percentage in terms of what we do on businesses higher than other regions. Actually recently at over 70%. We are at least half for this fiscal year. And just to give you also, Liliana, a sense of figures, in fiscal year 2024, our climate commitments in Europe reached 1 billion, circa 1 billion for our own account. Now, working with financial institutions, just zooming in a bit on financial institutions, it is a key element for us to work on climate. And we are really helping greening the financial sector in a number of ways. So one is by the financing, and a lot of the financing we have done recently in Europe, and in fact, for example, in Baku, we signed also an agreement with the Bank Respublika for greening as well, the greening of SMEs and companies, corporates. So that's one side. So financing for green. But the other angle, which is also extremely important, is all the work done in terms of the green taxonomy that we do also with the institutions, with central bank. And in fact, for example, in Baku, we also did some work with the Central Bank of Azerbaijan in terms of taxonomy and sustainable finance, the Sustainable Finance Network, which is also very important, but also helping banks in terms of identifying portfolios for green, setting standards, building capacity. Interestingly, for example, I was in Romania just last week, and it's a EU country, a more developed market compared to some of the markets that we operate in Europe. But if we look at the bank's portfolio, only 1.6% of this portfolio is actually green, and part of it is helping banks identify what is already green and what can be greener in their portfolios. We have done just on the financial sector, in particular for Europe, where there's quite a lot of innovation. In terms of climate finance tools, we've done sustainability-linked bonds, sustainability-linked loans as well, and the so-called SRTs, which are the significant risk transfer for banks, to name a few. So, and that can be then also used to deploy on the greening. Very concrete examples, just to give you some range of different investors. We did for Georgia, for example, we did a sustainability bond for about 10 million. In Kosovo, and just next door, we did also a 5 million loan to Raiffeisen to ramp up the green lending. Croatia, the first green senior preferred bond. I mentioned the SRTs. We're doing this with the key stakeholders such as BNP as well, also to fund new climate finance projects with the capital relief that you can get from these SRTs. And we are also working on these so-called the first MREL eligible instruments across the region. Here in Serbia, just as I am here, we have invested in one of the first MREL as well. And it's also to support climate finance. So this gives you a range of examples, but also the importance of the work we are doing with the financial sector in terms of greening the economy.
Thank you, Ines. I mean, you've mentioned very important things, and I mean, I feel like we've accomplished a lot in 2024. You've mentioned very, let's say, complex problems such as how do we decarbonize as a region in Europe, vulnerability to climate change, and how do we address that vulnerability, and then oil dependency, right, in terms of how do we diversify in Europe that oil dependency. And then, of course, there are financing opportunities, and we've been working across the sectors around these. But from your, aside from these, let's say, that we've mentioned right now, what do you think would be looking at 2025, the greatest challenges and perhaps opportunities? Because challenges are also opportunities. What do you see in 2025 in terms of how things are developing globally?
Mm-hmm. So part, I think, of the challenge is connected to capacity building and having, proper institutional frameworks and that can support climate finance development. And here I would say it's very important to continue the work we are doing with authorities, governments, central banks. I mentioned, again, to give the example of the work that we did with the Central Bank of Azerbaijan on the green taxonomy. So this is, and we keep hearing actually from our clients, from businesses to say, we need the proper institutional framework to allow us to go into this direction, setting standards, the right taxonomy for recognition of incentives as well. The second aspect is a lot of capacity building within the banks and the financial system. We are doing quite a lot of work with our key partner banks and financial institutions in terms of helping them identify these green projects, but helping them understand what is it that constitutes a green project as well. So technical capacity building within advisory services for financial institutions. And I think the third point would be just a general awareness of the opportunities. Like this session today, which goes exactly into that direction. So bringing our clients together, sharing knowledge of what has been done on other regions. And here I think, the IFC offers unique actually knowledge transfer because we operate globally, so we can look at a biodiversity bond that has been done in Latin America and show it to European clients or other regions for inspiration as well. So this continued work of knowledge transfer and building network awareness, exchange of experiences as well, what has worked, what has not worked. And just this is a little bit more, zooming into Europe. There is, of course, a big drive, in particular for countries that are apart from the European Union and others, like the region I am now in the Western Balkans, that are in some of them in path of accession into the EU. There's also a big drive from the regulatory context of the European Union on greening a lot of the businesses.
Thank you, Ines. One final question. I mean, for 2025, what are your expectations and key priorities for IFC in Europe?
Definitely a lot on the decarbonization. And decarbonization, not just, continued work with selecting businesses that are already conscious. And, just to give you some example of the conversations I had today, we were looking into if companies want to expand, whether they can set high standards for climate-friendly policies, for example, on buildings, hedge certificates, but also looking into sectors that are more carbon intensive. How do you green, for example, steel, hard to abate? So this is, on the industry side. Working a lot with banks with whom we do most of our businesses, banks and financial institutions. Intermediated finance is an excellent way to spread out more our greening efforts, and this can be done in even in regions. For example, I operate as well in Ukraine, where the energy sector has been significantly affected, and we are working at the moment with banks for energy efficiency lines, and also looking into renewable types of energy, for example, such as providing small businesses with solar panels and alternative ways out of dependency of gas. So that is, the topic of energy and decarbonization is across all our countries and projects, be it, accelerated because it's a security issue like you have in Ukraine, or even these days in Moldova, but also what we have seen, for example, in Caucasus, just taking the example of Azerbaijan, because the country is also looking into diversification of their economy, but also has made pledges in terms of reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and increase of renewables. We are also doing a lot of work and investments on infrastructure, on renewable, be it looking into wind farms, but also working with governments, for example, on working on the first auctions, opening up the market auctions for renewable energy, so opening up the market for more private sector investments, and so it's a common thread, very much a priority that applies, and a filter to selective approach to our investments.
Thank you, Ines. Yes, decarbonization, energy, opening new opportunities for the private sector around these topics will definitely be key for Europe. Again, I really want to thank you for your time and for your participation. I think your insights to this audience is invaluable. So thank you again, and back to you, Marcela.
Thank you so much, Ines and Liliana, for your time and this very interesting conversation. And I thank also, Ines, that you touched upon very important points that we are going more in depth in the next panel discussion. So thanks again. And let me introduce our guests for the open discussion. Our guests are coming from different markets and different organizations with a wide range of experience and perspectives. And we should be sharing with us their thinking and insights from their organizations. And let me just add one thing, because it has been mentioned in the previous interview, but the financial sector is very important. The financial sector is responsible for channeling around 70% of the capital that needs to flow for climate change adaptation and mitigation. So the role of the financial sector is very important. And with this, let me introduce first Rustam Tahirov, Director, Financial Sector at the Sustainable Development Department of the Central Bank of Azerbaijan. Welcome, Rustam. Juliana Tiba, Global Corporate Pool Director, Environment, Social and Positive Impact Financing Division at BRD Romania Group Societe Generale. Welcome, Juliana. Luisa Sidonio Rodriguez, Project Manager at the Ministry of Finance of Brazil. It's a pleasure to have you again in a panel discussion, Luisa. Aides Catamaquia, ESG and Climate Business Analyst at BB Bank Brazil, and welcome. And last but not least, Rong Sang, our Global Coordinator of the Sustainable Banking and Finance Network, the SBFN. So it is a great privilege to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and thank you in advance for sharing the 3 topics that we are going to discuss today. 1, the work that you are doing in terms of climate finance. Two, the key trends that you have been identifying over the last year and your expectations for the sector in 2025, both in Europe and Latin America and the Caribbean. For the audience, please remember that the chat is open for questions and comments, so please feel free to use it. If you have any questions for our panelists, that's the right area to be. And with this, let me start this conversation with Rong. Rong, again, welcome to this discussion. And as we are wrapping up, and Ines was mentioning also the importance of the SBFN initiative for this global work in climate finance and sustainable finance in general. So as we wrap up 2024 and look ahead at 2025, what do you see as the key trends and opportunities in sustainable and climate finance in the emerging markets, particularly in the two regions that are present today, Latin America and the Caribbean and Europe? And if I may, also, because it was also mentioned by Ines, there is an increasing interest in terms of alignment of international standards and the implementation of sustainable finance frameworks across different regions. So what would be your key insights and benefits of aligning these frameworks? What do you think that having alignment in terms of taxonomies and reporting would do for the climate finance in the financial sector, and how can these alignments help drive investment and foster innovation in climate finance?
Thank you, Marcela, for your kind introduction, and hello, everybody. I'm very honored to join the webinar and this panel with distinguished panelists. So Leila's COP29 presentation and the conversations also by Liliana and Ines provide very valuable framing for this panel, and also underpinned the importance of policy environment, Marcela, as you mentioned, and also market capacity for climate finance. So in this connection, my contribution to the panel will focus on share the climate and sustainable finance trends opportunity based on the SBFN research. My colleague Delma will help me to project a couple of slides. Yeah, it's there. Okay, so firstly, what is SBFN? SBFN is a knowledge and capacity building platform for financial regulators and banking association from emerging market, public and private partnership. It brings together 96 member institutions from 72 countries, representing more than 92% of total banking assets in the emerging market. We have the critical mass. IFC is the SBFN's secretariat and knowledge partner. So the diverse membership, they have a clear goal through two key objectives. That's improved management of ESG and climate risk and performance. And the opportunity side, it increase the capital flows of activities with environmental, social, and climate benefits. So 12 years in making already in SBFN's history, and make a lot of transformation change. I want to highlight two data based on our last year's report. 400 plus sustainable finance policy framework has been launched in those SBFN countries, and 759 billion in thematic bonds have been issued across 45 member countries as of 2023. Next slide, please. I would like to, back to your question, Marcelo, I would like to highlight 5 key trends on sustainable finance policy movement. First is sustainable finance, including the climate finance framework development, is expanding with adoption with a more holistic approach. Earlier years, we see more individual policies, but this, in the last couple of years, it's more becoming a policy package that covering both risk and opportunity sides of climate and sustainable finance, and covering all aspects of financial ecosystem from banking to capital markets. Second, policy implementation is important. So to make it successful, regulatory and industry associations are designed actions to enhance enforcement and incentivize adoptions particular private sector. And building capacity, Ines also mentioned the capacity building is very important, and also foster collaboration, public and private, and within the country across different ministries and private sector. Third, the ESG risk management policies has been mainstreamed among the SBFN countries as a foundation to enable climate financing and prevent greenwashing. Fourth, the rapid progress has been made by SBFN countries in developing framework to address climate-related risks, reflecting particular international standards. Last but not least, the surge in the issuance of thematic bonds guidelines and sustainable finance taxonomies caused the urgent needs for interoperability and comparability, which I will cover later on. This is the SBFN measurement framework developed by members. It offers a unique methodology to measure the collective member progress systematically across 3 pillars: ESG integration, climate and nature-related risk management, and financing accessibility on the opportunity side. We don't have time to go through the details which highlight the achievement, particularly in the last 2 years, but all the information is captured in the SBFN website and the newly launched data portal. You can really access country by country and also region. And in Latin America and the Europe regions, we have 44 member institutions from 37 countries. And these slides show 2 case studies of 2 countries, Colombia from Latin America, Georgia from Europe. Both countries have reached to the advanced stage of sustainable finance policy development and implementation. Again, we don't have time to go through the details of the 2 case studies. You can see it's very busy slides. We will share the slides later. But in general, I want to highlight both countries have developed comprehensive policy framework for the entire financial sector, covering ESG, climate, and biodiversity, and financing instrument, and the taxonomy. And they also fostered public and private sector collaboration for policy implementation, making continued progress guided by their strategic roadmaps. And so financial institutions from these regions should respond to these policies with the strategy, governance, system, policy, procedure, and capacity for implementation and also innovation. So your second question is about the particular, the key policy framework like taxonomy, reporting, and interoperability, and this is the key word these days. So I would highlight 2 particular policy standards are becoming increasingly important, in particular in these 2 regions, but yet very challenging for financial institutions to navigate. And I want to provide some insights. Hopefully they're helpful. First, on taxonomy. Ines also mentioned taxonomy earlier on, and a number of initiatives during the COP. SBFN members have recognized taxonomy as a key critical component of their overall national sustainable finance strategies and an essential tool for the financial sector to identify and evaluate projects, assets, and activities that qualify as green, socially inclusive, and sustainable. While most taxonomy started with a primary focus on climate mitigation, and we see the country started to expand to include social themes like the gender, health, education, and also in the recent 2 years, we see biodiversity and blue themes, blue finance themes also added on. And there is a critical need for interoperability and alignment among all these taxonomies, which lead to my next slides. Again, another busy slides, but we did a very rapid mapping of global, regional, and national taxonomies. We mapped 62 taxonomies by geography and themes. 10 taxonomies are developed by global institutions, we call global taxonomies, such as CBI, IFC, IGMA, and MDBs. We also mapped the 6 regional taxonomies from EU, from Latin America, and also ASEAN 10 countries, and ASEAN already have 3 versions of the taxonomies. And the rest are national taxonomies. With so many taxonomies, the challenge faced by the financial sector is how to navigate, how to compare them, but most important, how to implement them. So to enhance the interoperability and alignment, SBFN, in partnership with the Central Bank of Azerbaijan, IPSF, International Platform of Sustainable Finance supported by EU, and UNDP, we launched a roadmap for advancing interoperability and the comparability of sustainable finance taxonomies during the COP29 mentioned earlier. So my final panelist, Rustam from Central Bank of Azerbaijan, will further explain this in his intervention. So my final slides is on the second, I would say, most challenging but more important sustainable finance standards is the reporting. While climate accessibility reporting framework are evolving rapidly, there remains a lack of comparable and credible data on the implementation at the market level. There is urgent needs for enhanced monitoring, reporting, and disclosing requirement that can systematically tracking financial institution adoption of those frameworks, and also the impact on the market. In addition, the limited capacity and resources in the emerging market present a further challenge. So looking ahead, SBFN has conducted a benchmarking of over 30 member reporting and disclosure frameworks. Based on this, we were developing a reporting toolkit that capture a common approach and also providing reporting template and tools aligned with international standards. And happy to say that we were very have a pleasure working with ISSB, form a partnership to focus on capacity building for the emerging market. And this partnership will support members to improve interoperability and ensure alignment with international standards. So to conclude, I hope my presentation could provide useful insights and resources for the financial institutions to navigate the policy landscape and inform the financial institution strategy and actions. Thank you very much. Back to you, Marcella.
Thank you so much, Rong. As we mentioned before, the presentations, all the material will be shared with you, so you'll have all these sources and references available. As anticipated by Ron, let's go to Rustam to talk a little bit about interoperability of the global financial system, which was one of the key topics at COP29, Rustam, right? So can you tell us a bit about the role that the central bank played? You initiated the roadmap for interoperability of sustainable finance taxonomies. Could you elaborate a bit more on what it means to have this? What's the potential impact of this particular initiative in terms of sustainable finance frameworks at the global level?
Thank you, Marcella, for inviting me to participate in this important event. My name is Rustam Tahirov. I work for the Central Bank of Azerbaijan as a Director of Financial Sector Sustainable Development Department. Answering your question, let me first broadly reflect on the outcome of COP29. It is clear that several key breakthroughs have been achieved, and one of the most significant is the agreement to triple climate finance for developing countries, increasing from the previous goal of 100 billion to 300 billion annually by 2035. Another major outcome, equally important, is increasing recognition of importance of interoperability within the global financial system, which Rong talked about it briefly. For the first time, the interoperability of sustainable finance taxonomies was set as one of the central topics of COP agenda. Central Bank of Azerbaijan was at the forefront of this initiative, leading efforts alongside with international partners, as named by Rong, IFC, SBFN, IPCF, and UNDP, to launch roadmap for advancing interoperability and comparability of sustainable finance taxonomy. why taxonomy interoperability is so crucial in achieving Paris Agreement goal. We know that there are broad consensus that private sector shall play an increased role in financing transition to a low carbon economy. In this regard, understandably, credibility of sustainable investment products and strategies is vital for building trust among investors. And sustainable finance taxonomies provide a common language for investors and other market participants, helping to assess whether investments meet robust sustainability standards and align with policy commitments. From a global perspective, taxonomies are most valuable when they are similar in structure, have aligned objectives, employ easily comparable classification system for eligible activities. However, today, multiple taxonomies and standards across jurisdictions have led to market fragmentation, inconsistencies, and increased transaction costs for market participants. This fragmentation has made it more challenging to mobilize climate finance efficiently and has increased risk of greenwashing. To address and contribute finding a solution to these issues, Central Bank of Azerbaijan, together with international partners, initiated a roadmap for advancing interoperability and comparability of sustainable finance taxonomies. Let me a little go deeper what actually it means and highlight a few of them. First is harmonization of industry classification system is one of the objectives of the roadmap. As we know, currently different taxonomies use different industry classification systems, such as GICS, ISIC, and NACE codes, and others. These differences create barriers to harmonization. And we, together with our partners, believe that aligning taxonomy with common classification system would significantly reduce transaction costs and improve comparability for international investors. And another key element is developing a list of core economic activities. And in this regard, this element is based on very commendable initiative by IPCF, which stands for International Platform on Sustainable Finance, that prepared common ground taxonomy, which analyzed the differences and similarities between EU green taxonomy and Chinese green taxonomy. It doesn't seek to establish common taxonomy, but it does provide a case study how to compare taxonomies and map activities within each taxonomy. And this is a starting point to add new countries, new jurisdictions, and thus contribute interoperability. Another one, technical screening criteria, which is important element of the sustainable finance taxonomies. While we understand that some variations in technical screening criteria are inevitable, but through a common approach for methodology, for transparency, it is possible that to mitigate inconsistencies and facilitate global climate finance flows. And maybe lastly, I would like to emphasize transition activities. Most existing taxonomies currently follow binary approach, classifying activities green and not green. This has resulted in the majority of capital being directed towards already low carbon activities with limited investment in transition efforts for carbon intensive industries. And through the roadmap, we together with partners are committed to develop a common approach for designing transition taxonomies and so that achieve transition of hard-to-abate sectors. And in conclusion, I would like to reiterate that reducing inconsistencies and improving alignment across taxonomies, we can create more efficient and transparent global financial system that mobilize necessary resources to achieve Paris Agreement on climate objectives. And Central Bank of Azerbaijan, together with international partners, remain committed to advancing this agenda and work collaboratively with international partners to ensure effective implementation of the roadmap. Let me stop there. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Rustam, for these insights about the work that the Central Bank of Azerbaijan has been doing in the past year. And I think that gives us some space to go to Luisa now to talk a little bit Brazil, because Brazil is taking the torch now of COP. So Luisa, can you tell us a little bit about the ecological transformation plan that you have in place? What does it mean in terms of goals and the agenda for 2025?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, Marcela, and hello to everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Yes, of course. The ecological transformation. First, I think it's important to highlight that it is the first time, at least that I know, that an ecological plan like that is inside of the Ministry of Finance. So I work here at the Ministry of Finance in the Secretariat with the Ecological Transformation Plan. And there is a reason why, because it's not just an environmental plan. The idea here for us is to use this as a new model for economic and social development, and an environmental friendly one, a plan that sees the nature and the environment as allies, and especially considering all the opportunities that we have in Brazil. But the idea here is not to use our natural resources and all our potential in a bad way, but wisely. So going beyond the production of commodities, using technology, innovation, developing strategic links in value chains, biotechnology. This is the idea here, and that's why it is inside of as I said, the Ministry of Finance. And the plan has a few objectives. One is to create quality green jobs, enhance productivity, but this in an environmental sustainable foundation, and also promote social justice. So this is a plan that has to have a better income distribution and widespread the benefits. The plan is structured in 6 pillars. So the first one is sustainable finance. That is more horizontal one. The second is enhancing technology capacity, as I said. So the idea here is not to be just in commodities, producing commodities. So this is a very important pillar. The third one is bioeconomy and agri-food systems. The fourth is energy transition. The fifth is circular economy. And the sixth and last is green infrastructure and adaptation. As we emphasize it here in this webinar, the importance of adaptation is huge. And what we have, the most important goals for 2025 in the plan. So last week, or I think 2 weeks ago, my minister, Fernando Haddad, presented the 25 most important topics in the agenda of the Ministry of Finance. And 9 of them were in the ecological transformation plan. So I'm going to do here a quick overview of these points very quickly. So the first one is to issue sovereign sustainable bonds. So this was highlighted by Ines as well, the green bonds, or as she was sustainable bonds, as she was saying. So Brazil already issued 2 times. So since 2023 and also in 2024, we issue our sovereign sustainable bonds. So each time $2 billion. And the idea is to keep with that because the resources of these bonds go to our climate fund. Our climate fund in Brazil is managed by BNDES, the Brazilian Development Bank, and related with the ecological transformation plan and its pillars. The second one is to advance in the carbon market implementation. So we just had the law last year in December, and the law created a regulated carbon market in Brazil, also including an emission cap and pricing mechanism. So was sanctioned in the end of the year. And this year, the idea is to work in law regulations and also in the governance of this structure. The third is the Eco-Invest. So we just had an auction I think it was in October of 2024. And this is a program to caution currency fluctuation and also to mobilize and attract foreign investments. And so the first auction was held in the end of 2024, and we are expecting new auctions in this year, and also the regulation of the 3 sublines that we have there, because we used the blended finance one, and we have to regulate the 3 other ones. The fourth is to public procurement for domestic content. So to use public purchases and to finance prioritize equipment and services in Brazil. So we adopted local content rules for the climate fund, for all other policies that we have in Brazil as PAC, and also for the regional funds that we have. And the idea is to keep with this. The fifth is the implementation of the Brazilian Sustainable Taxonomy. So as highlighted by Rung, by Rustam, by Ines, this is very key. And so we are creating this classification. In the case of Brazil, it is a sustainable finance. So it includes social and environment. And it's supposed to be mandatory in Brazil. It's not voluntary. And so the text is under public consultation now, and the implementation is scheduled for the second semester of 2025. The sixth is the policy for attracting data centers and the legal framework for artificial intelligence in Brazil. So the idea here is to put sustainable criteria to attract these data centers in Brazil, and leverage the renewable energy potential that we have. Also, the 7 is the Plano Safra and Renova Agro. Those are Plano Safra is a policy that we have in Brazil that we call harvest plan, let's say, and with more sustainable criteria. So we've been doing that in the last 2 years, and the idea is to improve and do it more in this Plano Safra again. And the 8th is the Brazil Climate and Ecological Transformation Investment Platform, BIP, as we call. So this is a platform being managed again by BNDES, and the idea is to connect projects in the 3 grand areas, let's say, nature-based solutions and bioeconomy, low carbon industries, and energy transition, and connect with a network of financiers. And we already have projects of $12.2 billion. And last but not least, the Tropical Forest Forever facility. That is our main goal to present that in COP30. This is a collective effort between a few countries and also the World Bank. And we have your support. There is a great support here. And the idea is to create a global fund to compensate and pay countries that preserve tropical and subtropical broadleaf moss forests. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luisa, and thank you for making that last point as well, because COP17 is coming back to Europe. So it was in Latin America last year on biodiversity, and maybe the other way around, Europe needs to get ready to have that particular COP to talk about biodiversity and natural capital. So thank you so much, Luisa. So we've had an overview already about the market around SBFN and SBFN members. Let me just highlight here because because of time, Ron only shared two cases, Colombia and Georgia, but in that consolidated area in the Sustainable Banking and Finance Network matrix, we have other countries like Brazil, for example, that also are very advanced in terms of sustainable finance. So thank you so much, Luisa. And then we had the vision of the central banks, Ministry of Finance. And let's go to the private sector with Juliana. Thank you so much again for joining. And let me go to you with a very important question. So how does that look for you in terms of sustainable finance for Romania specifically? And let me complement that with what's the role of BRD? What role have you assumed to work on sustainable finance in Romania in general and climate finance in particular, so beyond sustainable?
So thank you very much, Marcela, for the introduction and the questions. Hello, everyone. I am also very happy to be part of this discussion today. And if I have to complement the different case studies that have been presented before in different geographies, and to have a kind of zoom in on our market, Romania, I would say about it the following. So I will start just saying a few words about a general context. Of course, as you know, Romania is an EU country committed to the Paris Agreement and will be a contributor to the overall European targets, aiming to reach climate neutrality by 2050, and also to the 2030 United Nations SDG agenda. In this context, the sustainable finance market in Romania progressively developed. However, it is still in a growing phase, while an important funding needs is expected for different sustainability purposes, but only referring to climate change, it will mean something like 60 billion euros needs until 2030. And if we say how it developed last year, our market in terms of sustainable finance, it is still driven by the international financial institutions like IFC and also by the private banking system. And the latter, I would say, that contributes to this development of the sustainable finance by mobilizing funds through different sources. And the fact that we see some bonds issues, particularly for this purpose, it's a kind of indication that it is an exercise aiming to increase transparency of the market and to adopt internationally recognized standards in all these sustainable finance instruments that are promoted on our market. And just to give you a figure, the level of the green loans registered on our market last year in September were about 1.2 billion euros in accordance with the report of our Romanian banking regulator. We also have to point out the fact that last year we saw the inaugural sovereign green bond issue of our country, initially for 2 billion euros, followed by other, let's say, issues that increase substantially the amount. And we believe that this represents or created the grounds for other potential transactions, similar ones, to be experienced on our market. And their green, the sovereign green finance framework could be also a kind of inspiration for other public or private issuers that might tape the local or international capital markets. In terms of asset classes, I would say that some of them are more prevalent on our market, and these are mainly represented by renewable energy products, the investments, green buildings, e-mobility type of products or services, energy efficiency, sustainable and or affordable housing, to mention just a few of them. I think it was also mentioned by Ines the fact that sustainability-linked instruments quite increasingly developed on other markets is the same the case in Romania. So we see this type of instruments complementing the green offer, both in terms of taping the banking market, but also the capital market. We also have to say that still the demand comes from the large corporates. However, it is a kind of overall interest, not only of the lenders, but also increasingly of the companies to have this type of instruments, sustainable finance type of instruments, promoted to SMEs clients. And of course, there are already available instruments that address the needs of the private individual, the retail clients. And in terms of the range of products, in 2024, we have seen quite a diversification of this type of products. If before we have seen more loans or bonds qualified or labeled as green or sustainable or sustainability linked ones, we noticed in the last year also emergence of letter of guarantees labeled or trade finance instruments like this, or even supply chain type of financing. So I would also end up this part regarding the snapshot on our market by reiterating what Ines said, the fact that the level of the let's say proportion of green financing within the total portfolio of assets of a bank is with a range of 1.6. It is somehow valid for Romania. It's 1.4 in our case, and this is represented by the indicator that was last year for the first time published, the green asset ratio under the EU taxonomy. And to come back to your question, what our bank, BRD Group Societe Generale, has, let's say, brought as contribution to this development, I would say that we, since the very beginning of the development of these sustainable finance instruments, showed a very strong interest. We committed with a large amount for this, let's say, type of financing. We had set as an objective for being achieved in 2025 to have 1 billion euros sustainable finance production, objective that we achieved 1 year in advance. And of course, this will oblige us further. We also contributed to the development of new types of products or new types of taping new markets like capital markets or different sorts of instruments. And thanks to some cooperation with your esteemed institution, we also implemented on the Romanian market an SRT type of transaction, which aims to, let's say, deploy even more this type of instruments locally and with the focus on SMEs clients. And we even want to go beyond all this and to, let's say, extend the range of products, again, with your support in the field of blue finance and also in the gender finance. This is because, of course, climate finance, it is a very important theme, but we shouldn't forget that while tackling climate finance, we need to have a just transition contemplated and not to lose sight also on everything that is related to biodiversity. So in a nutshell, this is what I wanted to share with you with respect to our market and our role on it.
Thank you so much, Juliana. That has been great to hear everything that you're doing in Romania, and that it's, in a way, it reflects also the global efforts, right? So that we've been discussing all of the webinar. So last but not least, Haide, thank you so much again for joining. So coming back to the private sector, but in Brazil. So would you tell us a bit about your main achievements as BV in 2024 in terms of climate finance? And also, if there is any particular role that you're playing or the priorities have shifted based on hosting the COP30 in Brazil for you in BV?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for the invitation. My name is Aide. I work with ESG business from Banco BV in Brazil. I will share with you an overview about the highlights of BV Bank and expectations for this year. So, BV Bank main achievements in 2024 in the areas of sustainability and climate finance were the advances in the public commitment seen in 2020 called the Pacts for a Light Future, whether through the offsetting of CO2 emissions from the financing of used vehicles, advances in the diversity and inclusion agenda, and the commitment to finance and distribute $30 billion in ESG business. Of this amount, in 2024, BV financed and distributed $2 billion for ESG business, considering both retail and wholesale. But I will speak about retail in the financing of solar panels, electric and hybrid vehicles, and on the other hand, about the wholesale through ESG operations related mainly to sanitation, renewable energy generation, energy efficient, sustainable construction, and low carbon agriculture. BV stood out through its ESG advisor services, such as Caramuru Sustainable Exchange Operations, which won the Anshan Award for Sustainability in the category of Products and Services. In addition, BV Bank CEO Gabriel Ferreira received the Eco Leadership Award for Anshan too, which recognizes leaders committed to the ESG agenda. And about the expectations for climate finance in this year, in the climate sphere, the bank became a signatory to the Principles for Responsible Banking in 2022 and also joined the Partnership for Carbon Account Finances. We are in the process of diagnosing the emissions of our retail and wholesale portfolio. We are closely observing the global scenario and the development of the Brazilian sustainable taxonomy. So we are seeing the most robust and assertive way to build our ESG journey. In the ESG advisor mentioned above, will help our wholesale clients toward decarbonization, transition. That's it. Thanks so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Aide, and thank you everyone for your time. We don't have enough time for a second round of questions because we are very close to the end of the webinar. But let me make some conclusions because we have talked a lot about how to increase climate finance and interoperability, both for at global level, let's say. We talked a lot about directing capital to also transition. I think that's probably one of the key topics that was discussed today. And the need, let's say, to increase transition finance for the different countries because some of the countries are very dependent on fossil fuels and other types of fossil fuels in general. I mean, there is a lot of vulnerability in terms of transition for the countries, and we as financial institutions, we need to take care of that as well. You can see the survey, the QR code for the survey in your screen. So we would appreciate if you take it. Finally, we talk about the numbers, what we are doing from the private sector, what we are doing at the country level in terms of climate finance, and it's the billions of dollars. We as IFC at the close of the last fiscal year, that's June 2024, we closed at $9.1 billion in climate financing. There are some other interesting figures about the millions of tons of reduction in GHG emissions, in annual reduction. So in the case of IFC and our clients, that was 24.3 million tons of GHG emissions reduced. And I think that we are all working in terms of having some positive impact on climate change. And finally, very important, adaptation. I think that's going to be a central topic for COP30. And it's the focus of the efforts of many institutions as we have heard. So with this, thank you so much again. Thank you to our audience. We had more than 400 people connected today. And I hope that we can see you soon in the next webinar in a month or so. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.